to the World War II newspaper channel where we read the Chicago Tribune one day at a time, going through World War II as it happened through the eyes of those who lived it. If you enjoy content like this, please subscribe to this channel and click on the bell icon to get notifications when a new upload is going to premiere. And also, if you want to hear the actual newsmakers, go check out my other channel, the companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. There we have vintage broadcasts, including newscasts, speeches, old movies, and music. And subscribe to that channel and click on the bell icon. Now for the newspaper. News as read from the Chicago Tribune for Monday, January 6th, 1941. Henry Chopp reporting. The weather today. The sun rose at 7:18 a.m. It set at 4:34 p.m. For Chicago and vicinity, increasing cloudiness on Monday, followed by snow Monday night and Tuesday, slowly rising temperature, gentle to moderate easterly winds. The low temperature, 3 degrees. The high temperature, 17. Today's headline, Take Bardia, Seize 25,000. Cairo, Egypt, January 5th. British troops captured the Italian stronghold of Bardia, Libya, today and seized more than 25,000 fascist troops. It was officially announced tonight. The Italian commander, General Annibale Bergonzoli, who is known to the British as Electric Whiskers because of his fiery red beard, was among those captured. All resistance at Bardia ceased at 1:30 p.m. today, the High Command communique said. Another Italian Corps commander and 4 senior generals were captured in addition to General Bergonzoli, who had commanded Italian legionnaires in the Spanish Civil War on the side of the Spanish nationalists. All stores and equipment are now in our hands, the British communique declared. It is not yet possible to make a full count, but prisoners so far captured exceed 25,000. Among other booty captured or destroyed are 45 light and 5 medium tanks. Capture of 25,000 Italians in the Bardia garrison meant that Marshal Graziani, the Italian African commander, now desperately strengthening his defenses at Tobruk, 70 miles west, has lost some 80,000 of his force of 250,000 in 1 month's time, British military observers here said. The figure of 80,000 was compiled thus: 40,000 Italians taken prisoner at Sidi Barrani and in the Western Desert, 25,000 seized at Bardia, and 15,000 more killed, wounded, or missing. Dispatches from the front said the Italian flag on Government House in Bardia was lowered at sunset, the first indication to observers outside the town that this last Italian post, threatening the Egyptian border 15 miles to the east, had been removed. Australian shock troops, preceded by tanks and supported by the RAF, began the final assault on Bardia 2 days ago. The Italians have been encircled and under land, sea, and air fire for the last 20 days. British militarists said the victory was due to meticulous preparations made during the 18 days before the final assault. Australian sappers did vital work before the final assault launched at dawn Friday by their infantry. Night after night, they slipped through the darkness to locate anti-tank traps and mines. They blew up the sides of tank traps in order to fill them in and exploded the landmines to open the way for the tank charge. Rome, January 5th. Giovanni Ansaldo, authoritative fascist editor, in a broadcast speech anticipating the British capture of Bardia, told the Italian nation today that fascist resistance at that base had given time for the preparation of defenses westward in Libya. Ansaldo voiced the highest praise for General Annibale Bergonzoli and his troops who defended Bardia. The editor said the Italians had too much respect for themselves and their army to try to pretend that the loss of Bardia would be only a small victory for the British or try to characterize it as a strategic error. The habit of minimizing every enemy success is one which we do not like, he said. If Bardia has fallen, this will be a new British success, local if you like, but still a considerable one, and a sad piece of news for us. Whatever the fate of Bardia, whatever may be the hour of its fall, let these troops be thanked for the example they have given us. New York, January 5th. The Italian radio said tonight in a broadcast picked up here that the British offensive in North Africa has proved a fiasco. From the strictly military point of view, there was little, if any, reason for undertaking an offensive at all, the Italian radio was quoted as saying. The offensive was undertaken because it was calculated that if the Italians could be given a few hard knocks, Italy would be tipped over the edge into revolution, the radio added. A few hard knocks have been given to the Italians, and the internal front of Italy not only has not collapsed, but it has strengthened. Consequently, the Great British Offensive has proved a fiasco. Berlin, January 5th. For the first time in weeks, the German public is paying special attention to Italian war bulletins. The presence of German planes at Italian bases increases interest in developments in the Mediterranean area, be it at sea in northern Africa, on the Adriatic, or in Albania. Despite the fall of Bardia, the Germans believe that a further advance into Libya will become increasingly dangerous for the British in view of the presence of a strong German air corps in the Mediterranean. Germans believe that a disruption of British sea communications between Gibraltar and Alexandria, Egypt, will greatly weaken the position of Britain in the eastern Mediterranean. British convoys to date have been able to sail from the western to the eastern Mediterranean through the Straits of Sicily, relying on aircraft carriers for their protection against Italian bomb attacks. The presence of German bombers, however, may completely change the situation. The Germans point to the successes they say their planes had against Allied warships in the Norwegian campaign. Although emphatically denied by the British, German airmen still insist that a British battleship was sunk off Namsos, Norway, by a single bomb. Aircraft carriers, it is asserted, are especially vulnerable to air attacks. The Germans declared that the serious damaging of a warship by air attack is almost as harmful to the British as it would be its total loss. The only British docks in the Mediterranean capable of accommodating larger war vessels for repairs are believed to be at Gibraltar. The docks at Alexandria, it is said, can only accommodate light cruisers and other small war vessels. While in recent weeks the importance of the three-power pact among Germany, Italy, and Japan has been stressed in Germany, the Deutsche Allgemeine Zeitung today expressed the opinion that the day for an armed conflict in the Pacific has not yet come. The European war has weakened England's position to such a degree that German warships are carrying on their trade warfare with England with greatest success, the paper said. The United States gradually is becoming the executor for England in the Pacific. Athens, Greece, January 5th. Italian counterattacks in Albania were hurled back by the Greeks today with heavy fascist losses, and the Greeks succeeded in capturing new coastal positions, a government spokesman reported tonight. He said about 250 men and officers were seized in the day's actions. The Italians, whose stiff resistance was overcome by the Greeks, fell back toward the important seaport of Valona, toward which the Greeks are driving, the spokesman added. The Italians abandoned in our hands about 100 prisoners, including a number of officers, the official said. Further northward, our units attacked, pushed their lines forward, and occupied new positions. Among these was a height of considerable strategic importance. The enemy defended itself in this region stubbornly, but was overcome, and we took 150 men and 4 officers and war materials. The Royal Air Force issued this communique today. Highly successful raids on road junctions and other military objectives in Elbasan were made by bomber aircraft of the RAF yesterday. All the bombs fell on the town, and a large fire with a column of black smoke was seen to break out. Photos show many direct hits on buildings and a number of fires started. From all operations, all our aircraft returned safely. Rome, January 5th. The Italian High Command, reporting on the war against the Greeks in Albania today, said, "We captured arms and prisoners during actions of a local character. Our formations machine gunned and dropped shrapnel bombs on enemy troops in movement." Budapest, Hungary, January 5th. Romania was cut off from the outside world tonight as the Soviet-Russian ministers to four southeastern European countries headed toward Moscow for a conference with Kremlin leaders on the establishment of Romania as a vast German military camp. All international telephone communications with Romania were banned. Fast international trains were stopped at the frontier. Behind this wall of silence, Germany's Balkan army was consolidating its position along the Danube, facing Bulgaria along the entire Russian frontier and in cities within a few miles of Yugoslavia. Reports brought across the Danube to the Bulgarian town of Ruschuk said the German army is contending with increasing Romanian disorders, which began with widespread sabotage by railroad employees in the so-called communist wing of the Romanian Iron Guard. The four Russian ministers recalled to Moscow for consultation were those in Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Romania, and Hungary. It was reported in Soviet circles that the Kremlin already has warned Berlin against a step which might seriously endanger good relations between the two countries. Before the communications ban went into effect, diplomatic reports from Bucharest said strong Nazi motorized columns had arrived at Gheorghiu, directly across the Danube from Ruschuk, with considerable bridge building equipment and a large corps of engineers. Romanian railroad authorities were ordered by the Germans to keep the line from Bucharest to Constanta, Romania's Black Sea port, in perfect condition for possible emergency use. Bucharest diplomatic reports also said Romanians, under Nazi guidance, had mined the Danube at Galați, which recently has seen several frontier clashes between the Romanians and Russians. The presence of German troops at Arad and Timisoara in southwestern Romania near the Yugoslavia frontier caused nervousness in nearby Belgrade. However, German quarters in Belgrade were said to assert that Yugoslavia would be treated as another Sweden if she behaved. With 40 troop-laden trains moving daily through Hungary toward Romania, the summons to the Soviet ministers was the first concrete evidence of extraordinary Russian interest. Soviet quarters in Belgrade declared the homegoing was linked with new military developments in Romania and Hungary and German troop movement toward Dobrudja. Dobrudja, a post-World War province of Romania, lies on the Black Sea, south of the Danube estuary, which forms its boundary with Bessarabia, former Romanian territory now ceded to Russia. The call to the four envoys was said to have come shortly after the Bulgarian Communist Party distributed leaflets in Sofia saying that Soviet Russia will not allow a single German soldier to set foot on Bulgaria. Bulgaria is a potential avenue for offensive action either against the Dardanelles and Turkey or against Greece, which has repelled the armies of Italy, Germany's Axis partner. Diplomatic dispatches from Bucharest, the Romanian capital, said all Romanian towns on the Danube facing Bulgaria in the 250-mile stretch between Târnu, Severin, and Gheorghiu had been emptied to permit billeting of German troops. A connection also was seen between the journeys of the envoys and the current visit to Vienna of Bulgaria's Premier Bogdan Filov, ostensibly to consult an eminent physician. London, January 5th. Men, women, and boys extinguished every incendiary bomb dropped on a London sector tonight by two waves of German raiders apparently attempting to repeat last week's devastating fire raid. The volunteers, apparently London's answer to official appeals for more fire watchers to prevent another terrific fire assault, fell upon the bombs as soon as they were dropped. Some of the volunteers chanted from the safety of doorways, "We want some more." There seemed to be as many fire watchers as there were fire bombs, even though the Germans were dropping them in this area by the basketfuls. The all-clear was sounded in the London area before midnight. The Germans also were reported over Liverpool, the East Midlands, and northwest and northeast England. The night assault came after a brief mid-afternoon alarm in London. The Air Ministry said a single enemy plane dropped bombs at a few points in East Anglia, damaging 2 places and injuring a small number of people. German raiders concentrated their attack Saturday night against a West England town. It was officially reported a number of people were killed there and others injured. The Germans identified the town as Avonmouth, an especially important port city for Bristol. 2 Nazi supply vessels off the southwest coast of Norway and a destroyer in the harbor of Brest, France, were hit by British bombs yesterday, the Air Ministry said today in a communique describing RAF activities, which included a raid on Hamburg. 3 bombs crashed on the destroyer in the attack, which took place at dusk. In a latter attack during the night, a 4th bomb exploded on the ship's stern, it was claimed. Fires were observed in Hamburg after the British raid there, the communique said. London, January 5th. Casualties from German bomb raids for the 6 months beginning in June show that for every 9 persons killed, 13 were injured, it was disclosed today. December figures are not released, but it is certain the total of 1940 raid casualties will be around 50,000. In December, the provinces suffered more than London, but it is said the casualty figure will be less than for November. From June to November inclusive, air raid casualties totaled 47,115, of which 19,545 persons were killed. The highest casualties were in September when 6,954 persons were killed and 10,615 injured. Air Chief Marshal Sir Frederick Bohill of the Royal Air Force Coastal Command gave this report of the command's activities for the year. More than 2,000 convoys, numbering 40,500 ships, totaling about 200 million tons, were escorted by aircraft of the Coastal Command. The value of inbound and outbound cargoes averaged about $16 million daily. The command flew about 34 million nautical miles during the year. Kunming, China, January 5th. Japanese warplanes bombed Kunming terminus of the Burma Road today for the 3rd time since the new year began. 10 dive bombers attacked the northeastern section of the city, inflicting about 20 casualties, all Chinese. Belfast, Northern Ireland, January 5th. The Ulster Unionist Council, which stands for Continued Union with the British Crown, declared that Ireland's neutrality is deliberately prejudicing Britain's prospects of success in a struggle which means as much for one country as the other. The declaration came in a report to be submitted on Thursday to a meeting of the Unionist Party. Ireland, which has refused Britain use of her bases on her territory, was attacked from the air several times last week and has protested to Germany on the grounds that some of the bombs, incendiary and explosive, as well as magnetic mines dropped on her soil, were of German origin. The Ulsterites report said in part, "Our political opponents, despite the life and death struggle in which the empire is engaged, have seized every opportunity to urge expulsion of Ulster, Northern Ireland, from the United Kingdom and its inclusion in Ireland, in the belief that Northern Ireland would be declared neutral and unable to help Great Britain." The report recalled an offer by the late Lord Craigavon, Governor-General of Northern Ireland, to enter into closest cooperation with Ireland for defense purposes on condition that Ireland take a stand on the side of Britain and not raise any constitutional issue during the war. Ireland's Prime Minister, Ivan de Valera, replied that he had not the slightest intention of abandoning neutrality. The Irish Constitution envisages a union of all Ireland with the same sovereign freedom that now is Ireland's. Ulster, with its 6 counties, and Ireland, with its 27, make up all of the island. Mexico City, January 5th. The reported presence of a German secret police or Gestapo organizer and a former military governor of Berlin in Mexico, along with recent pro Nazi anti Jewish manifestations, was said by responsible diplomatic sources today to have prompted a new investigation of Axis aims in Mexico. These sources said there has been a shakeup in the leadership of Vanguardia Nacionalista, Mexican nationalistic anti-Semitic political party, which has taken to disseminating its ideas at street rallies. The immediate objective of Nazi fascist propaganda in Mexico was said to be a whispering campaign that the United States is about to enter the European war, taking Mexico in against Germany, and a drive to counteract the effect of Vice President-elect Henry A. Wallace's visit to Mexico by saying Mexico is being bossed from the United States. Manila, Philippine Islands, January 6th. President Manuel L. Quezon's fever has subsided, but he needs a 3 months rest for a complete recovery from his illness, George B. Vargas, the president's secretary, said today. The Commonwealth president became ill with a severe cold 10 days ago. Vichy, France, January 5th. Admiral William D. Leahy, new United States ambassador to France, arrived here tonight. His train came into the capital of unoccupied France on time at 11:58 p.m., despite one of the worst storms France has had in years. He was greeted by Maurice Loz, chief protocol officer of the French Foreign Office, officials of the American Embassy, and a police guard, which usually turns out only for Chief of State Marshal Pétain. The ambassador and his wife went directly to a villa belonging to Frank J. Gould, wealthy American, which has been set aside as the embassy residence by the French government. Servants were preparing a late supper for them when they arrived. Ambassador Leahy is expected to see Marshal Pétain when he presents his credentials and a personal note from President Roosevelt on Tuesday or Wednesday. New York, January 5th. William Rhodes Davis, international oil operator, mentioned recently as a one-time bearer to the United States of a Nazi offer to negotiate an honorable and just peace with Great Britain and France, said today he had asked a congressional investigation of charges and allegations made against me. Davis said that as a patriotic American who served with the AEF in the World War, I resent the inferences that I am engaged in any activity inimical to the best interests of my country. New York, January 5th. Harry L. Hopkins plans to leave tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. on the Yankee Clipper to undertake his assignment as President Roosevelt's personal representative at London. The purpose of his mission is being kept a secret. Vatican City, January 5th. Pope Pius XII said today there could be no foretelling where the march of events would lead, but our longings, our prayer, our wish is a just and durable peace and ordered tranquility for the world. The Pope spoke to Roman nobles, among whom was his own Pacelli family, in an audience granted to them by every Epiphany. He said a rich patrimony such as the nobles enjoyed imposed two duties. First, the resisting of the temptation of an easy life, and second, the use of the riches largely for the advantage of persons less favored. London, January 5th. Important measures designed to speed up Britain's home front effort were announced tonight. The two ministerial bodies are to be set up. One will be a production executive group which will coordinate work of all departments engaged in war production and see that the nation's manpower is fully mobilized. The other will be a finance, trade, and export committee to frame the economic policy of the nation and deal with price control and such questions as imports and conduct of the economic war. The men picked to control the new war production executive body are A.V. Alexander, First Lord of the Admiralty, Lord Beaverbrook, Minister for Aircraft Production, Ernest Bevin, Minister of Labor, and Sir Andrew Duncan, Minister of Supply. London, January 5th. A meat shortage in many parts of the country because of reduced allocation to butchers by the Ministry of Food made this a meatless Sunday for hundreds of British families. At Brighton, butchers disregarded the Sunday closing law and opened their shops for a few hours this morning, but many customers still had to go without beef or mutton. The shops were open because the town's weekend meat supply did not arrive until yesterday. Government authorities were said to be taking a lenient view of the violation, one official declaring, "This is a real emergency and we think the butchers did right." Vichy, France, January 5th. Shoe rationing went into effect for unoccupied France today. Shoes may be purchased only with coupons delivered by the municipality upon written request. The decree included slippers but excluded baby shoes, dancing pumps, wooden, and straw shoes. Vichy, France, January 5th. At least 12 persons were reported killed by cold weather in the Auvergne district alone, as a snowstorm today was followed by a drop in temperature in unoccupied France. Snow reached 12 feet in the mountain areas and the thermometer dropped to below zero. In one area, the postal service was interrupted for the first time in 22 years. Lisbon reports said that the city and North Portugal again shivered under unseasonable cold, and meteorologists predicted colder weather. Rome, January 5th. In view of the increase in the cost of living, all Vatican employees today were granted a raise in wages. The increase is 10% to those whose wages are $50 or less monthly, 8% to those earning between $50 and $100, and 5% for all getting more than $100. Managua, Nicaragua, January 5th. Colonel Luis Manuel de Belay, Public Health Director, today announced a campaign has begun to stamp out malaria in many parts of Nicaragua where epidemics are prevalent. Because of the late rainy season, malaria this year was more severe than usual. Quinine will be given to the poor afflicted. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the number one song every Friday that is represented on that channel, as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now for national news. San Diego, California, January 5th. The bodies of 11 Navy flyers, including 4 who parachuted to safety from another ship last Thursday in Texas, were found today scattered over a mountaintop 35 miles southeast of here, on which a twin-engined Navy transport plane crashed last night in rain and fog. The ship exploded and burned after smashing against a huge boulder atop Mother Grundy Peak, a 3,068-foot mountain. Lieutenant Commander Joseph H. Gowan, 54 years old, who was at the controls, missed clearing the peak by 30 feet. All bodies were thrown clear of the plane. The transport, a Douglas R3D1, left Big Spring, Texas early yesterday afternoon, bound for North Island Base here. Aboard were the 4 flyers who had parachuted Thursday from a 4-engined Navy patrol bomber which ran into trouble in a snowstorm near La Mesa, Texas. 3 members of a Navy Accident Inquiry Board which investigated the bomber's trouble, and a crew of 4. Ranchers near Mother Grundy Peak reported that the transport crashed early in the evening. They heard the sound of the crash and saw a flare of light through the murk at that time. More than 150 soldiers, Navy men, CCC members, and deputy sheriffs cut through the brush to reach the wreck this morning. They found wreckage scattered over an area a quarter of a mile from the summit of the peak, and all of the bodies lying within 150 yards of the mountaintop. The transport crash was apparently due to the fact that Lieutenant Commander Gowan was off his course and had apparently begun losing altitude preparatory to an anticipated landing, not knowing that he was near the mountain's summit. The caretaker at Barrett Lake Dam, 3 miles northeast of the Mother Grundy Peak, reported hearing the plane flying low, much too low for this country, And Guy Happenstall, a rancher, said he heard the plane low over his house, then an echoing crash, followed by a flare of light. St. Louis, Missouri, January 5th. Two steel-decked boats are on the way down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico, where they will be used by United States naval flyers for dive bombing targets. The boats are as big as large motorboats and carry a crew of 2 men protected by a steel turret. Black stripes are painted on the decks of the targets, which are at which non-explosive bombs are aimed. Dayton, Ohio, January 5th. Buffeted by high winds and forced to alter its course because of icing conditions over Texas, a 4-motored Army Air Corps bomber returned here today after a 3,050-mile nonstop, non-refueling, circuitous flight to Fort Worth and back at an average speed of 190 miles an hour. Originally planned as a long-range high-altitude flight at 15,000 feet or better to test the endurance of the 6-member crew, the huge B-17 Flying Fortress bomber was forced to fly much of the time at half that altitude because of crosswinds that reached a velocity of 120 miles an hour at some points. Before landing at 9:55 a.m. Chicago time, it made another circuit over Columbus, Ohio, Toledo, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, and Louisville, Kentucky. Kingston, Jamaica, January 5th. About 50 United States naval engineers and surveyors have arrived to prepare Jamaica sites for United States naval bases made available by Britain in exchange for destroyers. Construction is expected to start soon. Birmingham, Alabama, January 5th. Warmongers in the New York and Washington chapters of the Committee to Defend America by aiding the Allies drove William Allen White, Emporia, Kansas editor, to resign the chairmanship, he said in a letter published here today. White's explanation for his resignation last Thursday was written to John T. Graves II, columnist for the Birmingham Age-Herald, which published it in early editions. I tried to get out after the election because I felt this warmongering activity made this a full-time job for a younger man, White wrote. I certainly do not agree with anyone who wants to make a climate in which the war bug will grow. In 2 of our chapters, New York and Washington, we have a bunch of warmongers, and under our organization, we have no way to oust them, and I just can't remain at the head of an organization which is being used by those chapters to ghost dance for war. The letter was removed from the latter editions of the Age-Herald. Editors of the paper said this was at the request of White. In Emporia, White refused to comment on the matter. White startled his committee on December 23rd with a signed copyrighted newspaper article in which he said that the organization's only motive was to keep the country out of war. He added that if he were writing a motto for the committee, it would be, "The Yanks are not coming." White opposed the sending of convoys to Britain or repealing of the Johnson Act, which bars credit to World War debt defaulters. Washington, D.C., January 5th. World attention will be riveted upon Washington tomorrow when President Roosevelt will take the next step in his war program aimed at the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The president will appear at a joint session of the Senate and House at 1 p.m. Chicago time tomorrow to submit his report on the State of the Union as directed by the Constitution. He will go to the Capitol about the time that the 2 houses complete their canvass of the electoral vote in the presidential election and formally proclaim him the people's choice for a 3rd term in the White House. The outline of the measures to carry into effect America's contribution to the efforts of Great Britain, Greece, and China to resist the encroachment of the totalitarian powers will constitute the burden of the message on his State of the Union. In this address, the president is expected to present specifically his plan for aiding the foes of the dictator short of war, which he outlined in general terms in his fireside chat a week ago. In particular, the president is expected to ask Congress for legislation to enable him to carry into effect his project to lend and lease to Great Britain upwards of $3 billion worth of aircraft, tanks, artillery, and other arms and equipment for employment against Germany and Italy, both of which, together with Japan, Mr. Roosevelt declared, are enemies of the United States. Greece and China and any other nations entering the war against the dictatorships likewise will be eligible to American aid on the same terms. Washington, D.C., January 5th. One of the tidiest rackets in Congress, that of making speeches outside of Congress for pay, may be abolished as the result of legislation introduced by Representative Usher L. Burdick, Republican, North Dakota. There will be some piteous wails from a small minority whose income will be affected by passage of the Burdick bill, which proposes that a congressman accepting money for a speech shall forfeit his seat. But only about 15 named senators and not more than a dozen representatives who are in the public limelight are so in demand for their speaking services that they can command a stipend. The great majority will whoop the bill through if permitted a vote by the leaders. The ordinary fee for a representative's speech is $100 plus expenses of travel. The utterances of a senator come higher. This price often is $250 and may rise as high as $500 in the case of a widely known figure. All records have been broken in the last 2 years, however, in the case of the most widely publicized congressman of the period, Martin Dies, Texas Democrat, who is chairman of the Committee on Un-American Activities. Dies has made at least 50 speeches in the last year on the subject of subversive activities in the United States. Although he refuses to make known the amount of his fees, it is reported that they have risen as high as $1,000 in the case of a packed house. Dies' charges are sometimes reportedly based upon the size of the house. He taken a certain percentage, and the sponsor, frequently the American Legion, getting the rest. New York, January 5th. E.C. Mills, legislative chairman of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, or ASCAP, announced tonight the Society's board of directors was considering a plan to license advertisers directly to use ASCAP music on radio programs. The purpose would be to return to radio waves the music controlled by ASCAP, all of which has been banned by broadcasters since January 1st because of a rate dispute. Mills said agencies representing 5 national advertisers had asked ASCAP to license them directly and asserted that the board would vote on the question tomorrow. Regardless of the outcome of radio's war over music, the work begun by Broadcast Music Incorporated in creating new opportunities for unknown composers will continue. M.E. Tompkins, general manager of BMI, told the Illinois Federation of Music Clubs yesterday. The controversy between BMI and the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, known as ASCAP, which has resulted in an almost complete change of musical fare for 674 radio stations in America, is not one solely of music, Tompkins told when the women meeting in the Chicago Women's Club, it is, he said, one of power. The power, he said, was that which a small group of men wielded through their control of music. He said that if ASCAP had represented all American creators of music, there would have been no so-called battle of music. The one thing that has made it possible to offer opposition to ASCAP, he continued, is the fact that ASCAP itself closed the doors to so many talented writers. Radio has met the challenge of the ASCAP by opening the doors by creating greater opportunities for American composers than ever has been known in the United States. This controversy will be ended sooner or later, one way or another. The music written by ASCAP members again will be made available to radio stations, but the work we have started will go on. When BMI was organized by the radio industry last April to combat what Tompkins termed ASCAP's unsound, undemocratic, un-American control, its great musical concern was not, he said, with the classics. They are free from copyright control except where issued in copyrighted arrangement. nor were the modern serious works of a serious problem, as comparatively few serious composers are ASCAP members, he said. The pressing problem was popular music. BMI was organized by two of the major broadcasting chains to form their own music pool in the fight with ASCAP. Sacramento, California, January 5th. For 10 years, W.H. Trendennick was accompanied on hunting and fishing trips by his fox terrier, Betty. A month ago, the aging dog's legs became paralyzed, although her health otherwise was excellent. Trendennick copied an idea from a baby walker and built a device which supports the dog's weight and still allows it to pull itself about. New York, January 5th. Bosley Crowther, president of the New York Film Critics, said tonight that even though Charles Chaplin had declined their award for the best screen acting of last year, we still feel that he gave the best performance in 1940. Chaplin, who renounced the award on the ground that acceptance would acknowledge the fact that actors are competing with each other, was not present at a party at which the critics gave out the awards in a New York Hollywood broadcast. Katharine Hepburn broadcast from Dallas, Texas, that she was hysterically happy to be awarded a scroll as the Best Actress of the Year for her role in the Philadelphia Story. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the #1 song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now for local and regional news. Brigadier General Thomas S. Hammond, chairman of the Chicago chapter of the America First Committee, ridiculed yesterday the talk that the United States is threatened by Germany and appealed to Illinoisans to write their senators and congressmen demanding that they take a firm stand against efforts to drag this country into the European war. The proposition of invading the United States from Europe is fantastic, but the idea that it can be done persists, General Hammond asserted. Competent military experts don't believe it possible. They point out that even if our Navy, already the most powerful in the world, were defeated, the invaders still would have to face American planes, minefields, harbor and coast defenses, and finally, the United States Army. He assailed the fostering of a belief that this country would be endangered by bombing raids, aside from the fact that there are few military planes which can cross an ocean, let alone return home. He asserted that such raids would be suicidal because these bombers would be without protection of pursuit planes, which are short-ranged. General Hammond stressed the problem of supplies in dealing with the claim that Germany could attack the United States from Brazil. At least 13 tons of shipping a month would be required to keep a single enemy soldier in fighting provisions, he said, making it essential to move 13 million tons a month across the Atlantic for an army of 1 million. And, the general added, when Hitler reached Brazil, he still would be 7,100 miles from the United States, twice as far away as when he started. Even if Hitler should take England, General Hammond said, he would not attack the United States because he would not try something he knew had not the slightest chance of succeeding. We must not let our common sense be swept away by our emotions as we did in 1917, he concluded. Philip F. La Follette, former governor of Wisconsin, assailed President Roosevelt last night as the leader of the war party in the United States and asserted that the president's foreign policies will carry this nation into a war so gigantic in size and so terrible in cost that our efforts in the World War will look insignificant. La Follette spoke under the auspices of the America First Committee over WGN and the Mutual Network. At 5:45 p.m. today, he will comment on the message which the president is to deliver to Congress. This talk is to be carried over an NBC network. Orders and preliminary commitments from the government for $7,602,494 of supplies were received the last week by companies in the Chicago industrial area. In addition, disclosure was made that Studebaker Corporation, who's an automobile manufacturer, would build in Chicago a plant for production of warplane engine parts. The exact cost of the plant was not made known, but it will be many $million. The largest of the supply and material contracts, which was still the letter of intent stage, covered $5,500,000 of naval anti-aircraft gun mounts to be built by Danley Machine Specialties Incorporated of Cicero. The company announced that the Navy had authorized it to expand its plant at a cost of $1,750,000 in connection with the order. Cudahy Packing Company Chicago was awarded a $792,865 contract to supply vegetable shortening to the Navy. Contracts received by Chicago area companies were Aluminum Products Company, LaGrange, Illinois, $498,160 of pots and pitchers for the Army, and $158,896 of aluminum were for the Navy. McGraw Electric Company of Elgin, $65,569 for toasters for the Navy. Peoria Malleable Castings Company, Peoria, Illinois, $1,881 order for thumb nuts for the Army, and Barber Coleman Company of Rockford, $1,309 of cutters for the Army. In Chicago, Powers & Company Incorporated received a $222,000 order for Army waterproofed bedding rolls. Holmes Projector Company, $88,626 for motion picture sound equipment for the Navy. Adv Price & Company, $20,850 for Army wool service coats. Carson Peary Scott & Company, $19,018 for underwear for the Army. American Sanitary Rag Company, $44,625 for wiping cloths for the Navy. Edward Katzinger Company, $59,600 for baking and roasting pans for the Army. Highway Steel Products Company trunk lockers, $79,945 for Army. Reuben Grace and Sons, $30,000 for Mackinac coats for the Army, and Monarch Pennant Company sleeve insignia, $22,340 for Army. R.H. Armbruster Manufacturing Company of Springfield, Illinois, received a $67,450 order for pyramidal tents, and Army Enameling and Stamping Company, Granite City, Illinois, won a contract to provide tinned cake pans costing a total of $1,712. Both were War Department orders. With reapportionment of Illinois congressional districts scheduled to be one of the major matters before the state legislature, which convenes Wednesday, attention was called yesterday to gross inequalities in the population of the districts as they are now constituted. The Legislative Voters League, in a pre-session bulletin, listed some outlandish figures to the members of the 62nd General Assembly and reminded them again that Illinois still is electing its congressmen from districts which were carved out 40 years ago. One interesting fact brought out by the bulletin's figures on county populations is that 50, or approximately half, of the 101 downstate counties of Illinois have lost population since 1900 in the urban migration. In 1900, all downstate counties had 2,982,815 population. In 1940, 3,824,824. In 1900, Cook County had 1,838,735. The 1940 figure was 4,049,331. Census figures from the 1940 enumeration have not yet been released for Chicago congressional districts, but an average of the 1930 populations would allow each of the 10 about 400,000 persons. The 1940 census figures are available for the 15 downstate districts, which, although not as much out of line as the Chicago districts, still range from a population of 162,384 in the 20th to 381,985 in the 11th. An equal reapportionment downstate would allot each district about 245,000 persons. The best arguments for reapportionment, the league's bulletin contended, are furnished by the smallest and the largest of the Chicago congressional districts. Illinois Republicans will start this week harvesting the fruits of their state victory in the election last November. The GOP marches into the State House on Wednesday to take control of both houses as the 62nd General Assembly convenes. It will be the first time since the 57th Assembly in 1931 that the party has had majorities in both chambers. It will be 5 days later the full harvest begins with the induction next Monday of Republicans who won 5 of the 6 constitutional state offices voted on at the polls approximately 10 weeks ago. But the cheering starts as the winning party takes possession of both sections of the legislative branch on the state government. Republicans, after 6 years of being the underdog in both chambers, regained control of the House of Representatives 2 years ago, but during the last biennium were outnumbered in the Senate 31-20. Chicago's 4,000 union bartenders will file into a courtroom today to vote under police guard for union officers. The election will climax the recent stormy history of the union Bartenders Local 278, whose leaders have been accused of being gangster stooges and which now stands ousted by both city and state labor federations. Today's election will be in room 741 of the county building. That is the courtroom of Circuit Judge Robert Jerome Dunn, who placed the union in receivership last summer when racketeering charges were made. Judge Dunn has said he will be present during the election, and until all the votes are counted tonight, the voting will be from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Meanwhile, there were 2 developments yesterday, both considered to have bearing on the election's outcome. Number 1, the Chicago Federation of Labor ratified the action of its executive committee in dropping the bartenders union from membership. Number 2, Captain Daniel Gilbert, chief investigator for State's Attorney Thomas J. Courtney, said he had learned that John Moore, alias Claude Maddox, a gunman and gangster, was the man who made the deal between George B. McLean, who is seeking re-election as union business agent, and James Crowley, candidate for union president. Judge Dunn placed the union in receivership on McLean's charges that Frank the Enforcer Nitti had seized control of the organization. McLean charged that Crowley, present secretary-treasurer of the union, and Louis Romano, its former president, were stooges of Nitti. 2 parolees from the St. Charles School for Boys were in jail last night because they resumed their crime careers after they had been turned loose. One, a confessed sex criminal, had 2 paroles. The other has confessed to 39 burglaries. 7 small girls yesterday identified the first parolee, Norman E. Smith, 18 years old, 1428 North Tripp Avenue, as the one who had attacked them. Smith, who was arrested Saturday night, has confessed more than a dozen sex crimes. He is being held in the Austin Police Station. Smith's record shows he has been paroled twice. He was first accused of sex crimes in 1935. Juvenile authorities sent against him to St. Charles in March 1936 for a 2-year term on charges of taking indecent liberties with children. He was paroled before he had served 18 months. On August 6, 1938, he was returned to the school for violating his parole. His father, Ray Smith, a WPA worker, said his son was paroled last October 30th for the second time. He got a job in a foundry, his father said, but quit after 2 weeks because he was not satisfied with his wages of $22 a week. The other St. Charles parolee is Horton V. Anderson, age 18, of 807 North LaSalle Street. He was freed after serving 13 months of a 2-year sentence for burglary and was still on parole when he was arrested last Monday with 2 companions in St. Louis, Missouri. The 2 arrested with him are Oliver P. Forrest, age 19, of 139 South Halstead Street, and William A. Smith, 22, of 804 North Wabash Avenue. All are in the Des Plaines jail. Anderson and Forrest, his companion in burglary, have been held to the grand jury. Smith is being held for federal authorities because he confessed he helped drive a stolen automobile to St. Louis. Grand Rapids, Michigan, January 5th. Before the horrific gaze of her sister and a 10-year-old niece, Mrs. Mary Jane McCarthy was shot and killed by her estranged husband, Willis McCarthy, today as she entered St. Andrew's Cathedral for services. McCarthy, carrying a shotgun, encountered his wife, an attractive 32-year-old brunette, on the cathedral steps. He fired one blast, which struck her in the head and shoulders. The wounded woman stumbled into the church and sat down in a pew near the door. McCarthy followed her and fired again, killing her. He then dashed toward the altar where William Horgan, 72 years old, made a futile attempt to seize him. McCarthy raced out of the church, waving the shotgun, pursued by Horgan and another churchgoer, Daniel Parsh, age 24. A passerby, Conrad Hugerheide, age 54, joined in the chase, and the 3 men cornered and seized McCarthy in a nearby alley. Mrs. McCarthy's niece, Esther Mae Madigan, was slightly injured by the buckshot. The victim's sister, Miss Catherine Madigan, was not injured. The McCarthys, who were married 7 years ago, became estranged 6 months ago. Mrs. McCarthy filed suit for divorce and recently obtained an injunction restraining her husband from molesting her. She charged that he threatened her, believing she was interested in another man. McCarthy's attorney in the contested divorce suit, Roman F. Glacheski, said that McCarthy was brought into court about 2 weeks ago when Mrs. McCarthy complained that he had violated the injunction and that he spent a night in the county jail when he was unable to post a bond. The couple had no children. She was his second wife. Mrs. McCarthy was a district WPA supervisor. Friends said that her husband had made several attempts to effect a reconciliation. McCarthy, 34 years old, is a soap salesman, a one-time amateur boxer. He is a nephew of former state senator Ernest Conlin, who now is president of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. At the police station where he was questioned by prosecuting attorney Menso R. Bolt, McCarthy said he could not remember the killing. Everything went black, he said. An intoxicated gunman, described as about 35 years old, last night staged 4 North Side holdups, got only $1 in loot, and then returned the $1 to his victim. First, he entered the car of the Reverend John Craig, 5054 Catalpa Avenue, in front of 4712 North Hermitage Avenue, and ordered the minister to start driving and drive like hell. When the minister began to jerk the wheel, the gunman struck him and fled. The robber got nothing from Mrs. May Garland in his second holdup. She rolled her car window up when he approached in the garage behind her home at 2907 Wilson Avenue. He got nothing from Ralph Alberts, 156 North Oak Park Avenue, Oak Park, the third victim whom he approached in front of 4445 North Whipple Street. He then halted Mr. and Mrs. John D. Fulsang as they drove into the garage behind their home at 4518 North Richmond Street. Mrs. Fulsang hid her purse. Fulsang gave up $1, mentioning they were returning from church. In that case, the bandit said, "Here's your dollar back." Kankakee firemen dragged for hours yesterday in an attempt to determine whether an automobile plunged into a quarry in the 600 block of North Schuler Avenue, Kankakee, late Saturday night. Oil on the surface of the pond, which is about 40 feet deep, bore out the belief of nearby residents that a noise heard Saturday night might have been caused by an auto smashing the protective fence and running over the bank. Sergeant Burt White of the police department said an object believed to be a car was hooked during the dragging but lost. The work will be resumed today and a diver may be sent down. Two members of a family were killed last night and four others severely burned when an oil stove used to heat their two-room home at 9823 Lawrence Avenue, Schiller Park, set bed clothing afire. Harvey Sutton, 32 years old, unemployed, and his son Charles, age 8, burned to death. Schiller Park firemen rescued the mother, Agnes, 28, and three other boys, Harvey Jr., age 9, George, age 12, and Joseph, 18 months old. They were revived by Schiller Park and Elmwood Park firemen, then taken to Westlake Hospital, Melrose Park, and later to County Hospital. The mother and Harvey Jr. were said to be in serious condition. The Sutton home was in the rear of a tavern. Indianapolis, Indiana, January 5th. Mrs. David Alderdice, Sr., 43, and her son Anthony, age 7, died of suffocation today in their fire in their Washington Boulevard duplex apartment on the north side of the city. Mrs. Allardyce's husband and son, David Jr., the latter a widely known Princeton University football star, were burned severely on their heads, faces, and arms in attempting to rescue other members of the family. A third son, John, was away from home for the night. The fire started shortly before 5 o'clock in the first-floor apartment occupied by the J.S. Rosenstein family, all of whom escaped. Alderdice Sr. is vice president of Kingan and Company Indianapolis Meatpackers. He also was a noted athlete when a student at the University of Michigan. David Jr. completed his collegiate football career last fall, having played halfback on the Princeton varsity team for 3 years. Carlinville, Illinois, January 5th. Fire early today raged through a block on the west side of the public square, destroying 2 buildings and damaging 3 others. Firemen aided by the Gillespie Department extinguished the blaze. Loss is estimated at $250,000. The City Council will hold a public hearing this morning for civic, taxpayer, labor, and civil service organizations on its 1941 operating budget, which the aldermen hope to cut $2,200,000 below the 1940 figure. Yesterday, 2 city finance officials cited the chronic low rate of tax collections to show the need for the slash. One of the means for attaining the reduction is a proposed 10% pay cut for members of unions regularly employed by the city. Last week, union leaders threatened to strike if the cuts were made, but council leaders retorted that even with a 10% pay decrease, city employees with union cards still would be getting more than union workers in private industry. Buses will be substituted for streetcars today on the Chicago Surface Lines route in Cicero Avenue between Archer Avenue and 63rd Street. The change will be made in compliance with an Illinois Commerce Commission order which directed the company to remove trolley wires, poles, and tracks alongside Chicago Airport. The ICC order was issued after the City Council decided the poles were a hazard to air traffic. A job clinic for mature women, either unemployed or in need of readjustment in their present work, will be sponsored by the Chicago Altrusa Club at 7:45 o'clock this evening at the Chicago Women's Club, 72 East 11th Street. The clinic, to be conducted by the question and answer method, will be under the supervision of a board of experts, including a psychiatrist, a physician, a personal director, an employer, a representative of the Council of Social Agencies, and a representative of an adult education organization. Miss Elizabeth Whiteman, member of Altrusa, a service club for women executives and professional women, will be moderator. The Christmas holidays end this morning for school children in Chicago and the suburbs. More than 500,000 boys and girls will return to classes. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the number one song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And in sports, Boston, Massachusetts, January 5th. The Chicago Blackhawks gave their rookie goalie Sam Lopresti stout support tonight while gaining a 2-2 National Hockey League tie with the Bruins in Boston Garden before 12,000. Lopresti, called from the Kansas City American Association Club to replace the injured Paul Goodman, made his major league debut an impressive affair before he turned back all except 2 of the 29 shots the Bruins aimed at him during 70 minutes of rugged play. The tie sends the Hawks to New York for their battle on Tuesday with the Rangers, confident that the youngster will stand up under Major League fire and eager for victory. They return to Chicago Thursday night to meet the Montreal Canadiens in the stadium. The busy week will be climaxed with a battle with the Detroit Red Wings, whose slugging defenseman Giacomo Orlando distinguished himself in their last meeting in Chicago by hitting a spectator after the game. Orlando went unpunished by the National League officials. Lopresti's first miss tonight must be recorded as a fluke, for the skate of Johnny Mariucci, Blackhawk defenseman, deflected the puck into the cage for the first Boston goal. It was credited to rookie Terry Reardon, who had fired originally after taking a pass from Bill Hullett. Hullett drew the first of the 10 penalties handed out by referee Frank King Clancy, and while he was serving his 2-minute sentence, Joe Cooper counted for the Blackhawks after 8:52 in the first period. The Hawks pulled into a 2-1 lead during the 14th minute of the third period when Paul Hirschenheimer converted Doug Bentley's assist, but Dit Clapper rifled in a 40-footer and put the Bruins back on even terms with less than 3 minutes of regular time remaining. The deadlocked rivals were in ugly moods during the overtime session, which saw 7 penalties imposed, including 2 each against Clapper and Mariucci, who came to blows after the Bruins' defense star rushed to the aid of Eddie Wiseman of Boston as he tussled with George Allen along the left sideboards. Detroit, Michigan, January 5th. The Detroit Red Wings pulled up to a tie with the idle first-place Toronto Maple Leafs in the National Hockey League tonight with a 3-0 victory over the Montreal Canadiens. The Red Wings, in ringing up their 5th consecutive triumph before 9,672 fans, tallied twice in the opening period and, for a finishing touch, added another in the final frame. The shutout was the second of the season for Detroit's rookie goalie Johnny Mowers. New York, January 5th. Phil Watson scored 3 goals tonight as the New York Rangers whipped the New York Americans 6-2 for a lead of 3-1 in the City Series. A crowd of 15,205 comfortably filling Madison Square Garden saw a speedy and well-contested first period, followed by 2 periods in which the Rangers scored time after time on breakaway plays in which the Americans' defense was trapped out of position and goalie Earl Robertson was given no chance. All right, let's take a look at the National Hockey League standings. Well, in first place is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have won 14 and lost 7 and tied 1 for 29 points. They are actually tied with Detroit with 29 points. Detroit has won 12, lost 6, and tied 5. And Boston Bruins are 8-7 and 8 wins, 7 losses, tied 6 for 22 points. The New York Rangers have won 8, lost 10, and tied 5 for 21 points. The Chicago Blackhawks have won 7, lost 10, and tied 5. The Montreal Canadiens have won 8, lost 11, and tied 2 for 18 points. The New York Americans are down in last. They have won 6. Actually, they're tied for Montreal for last. They have won 6, lost 12, and tied 6, and they also have 18 points. Purdue's Western Conference basketball champions, who have lost only one non-conference engagement this season, will open the defense of their title tonight at Illinois. It was on this same court the Boilermakers concluded the 1940 campaign with a victory 34-31 that clinched the championship. Tonight's battle feature engagement of 3 Big Ten games promises to be as close as the contest a year ago and equal in importance. Last year, the Illini finally finished in a tie with Northwestern for 4th place and always regretted the illness that kept Bill Hapek, the conference's leading scorer, from competing in the opening game against Indiana, which was lost by 2 points. Hapek has been graduated, but Purdue also has graduated valuable men. Thus, tonight's test centers on the development of sophomores and other replacements. This contest holds the spotlight because of Purdue's defense of its championship, but in the long pull, it may be no more important than Wisconsin's invasion of Minnesota or the clash between Ohio State and Michigan in Ann Arbor. Both the Buckeyes and the Wolverines were beaten by Princeton, which later lost to Wisconsin, and then was whipped Saturday night by Northwestern 34-23. The Tigers conclude their conference trip tonight at the University of Chicago. All conference teams will see action this week except Chicago. Indiana University, which was runner-up to Purdue last year and later won the National Collegiate Championship, faces Illinois Saturday night. Games this week accurately will indicate the success or failure of the Illini in 1941. The Hoosiers, incidentally, have lost only one game this season to Southern California. Their preliminary activity included a 4-game Pacific Coast trip, finally climaxed with the conquest of Kentucky in the Sugar Bowl game in New Orleans. Northwestern also has been beaten only once this season. The Wildcats defeated Wabash, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, and Princeton at home, but were defeated by Butler in Indianapolis. The improved Northwestern 5, which likely will have 2 sophomores as mainstays in the race, gets started in conference play Saturday evening at Ohio State. Michigan is Purdue's opponent in Lafayette, and Iowa plays Wisconsin in Madison on Saturday night. Illinois ticket manager C.E. Bowen believes that tickets for tonight's game with Purdue will still be available at starting time 7:30 o'clock, but he also predicts one of the largest crowds of the year. Coach Doug Mills of Illinois believes the team will be ready for the Boilermakers after its grueling Eastern trip. The Illini defeated Notre Dame in overtime, beat Manhattan in New York, lost by 1 point to Temple in Philadelphia, and then were trounced by Marquette. In Illinois' other games, Pittsburgh won in overtime, and the Illini defeated Georgia and Kansas State. If Captain Johnny Drish, who must wear a shoulder harness which prevents him from raising his injured left arm, can play, Mills will have 4 veterans and a sophomore Art Matheson, 6'5" center, in the starting lineup. Darsh will pair with Illinois' second high scorer of 1940, Walter Evers, at forward. Vic Wukovitz and Robert Richmond are the guards. Bill Hocking is ready to substitute for Drish. Chicago Stock scored after its victory Saturday night over Marquette, but the Maroons may find tougher going against Princeton tonight. The Tigers, however, were far off form in the first half of their game with Northwestern when the Wildcats led 25-10. Captain Joe Stampf, Maroon free throw specialist, is expected to lead Chicago's attack at center, with Chuck Wagenberg, small but capable guard, and Edgar Nelson, sophomore forward, supplementing Stampf's efforts. Jack Fonz, a tall veteran forward, and either Bob Hickson or George Krakawa at guard complete Chicago's starting lineup. Krakawa is a sophomore. Hickson also is playing his first year, is a transfer from Dartmouth. Notre Dame, Indiana, January 5th. Wabash College and Notre Dame will clash here tomorrow night, renewing one of the Irish's oldest basketball rivalries. The series started in 1908 and continued almost unbroken until 1931. Robert E. Pete Vaughn, who starred in football and basketball for Notre Dame when the rivalry began, has been athletic director at the Crawfordsville, Indiana school for many years. He will attend the game. Cy Singer, sophomore from Jasper, Indiana, replaced Larry Ryan, Chicago senior, in Notre Dame starting lineup last night, scoring 14 points to pace the Irish to a 48-47 victory over Kentucky and Louisville. He will again team with Bob Smith of Joliet at guard. Captain Eddie Riska and George Sobek will be at the forwards, and Frank Quinn or Joe Gillespie, both of Indianapolis, will probably be at center. Mike Poja, Marquette University sophomore basketball forward, who was injured with only a minute to go in Saturday night's game with Chicago in the Midway Fieldhouse, still was confined to Billings Memorial Hospital yesterday with a slight brain concussion. The Marquette trainer, Eddie Rosemary-Noski, who remained with Poja, said the Hilltop athlete probably would be able to return to his home in Milwaukee tomorrow. Tony Zale, middleweight champion, will open boxing drills this afternoon in Trafton's Gymnasium for a 10-round non-title bout with Steve Mamakos of Washington, D.C. in Chicago Stadium on Friday. At the same time, Mamakos, who started workouts after his arrival on Saturday, will continue sparring sessions. Although he carried only 156 pounds when conquering Milk Aaron in the Coliseum last November 25th, Mamakos said he will not be handicapped by being forced to come in over the title limit of 160 pounds. In an effort to prove this claim, Matt Twomey, Steve's manager, recalled that his protege was at 158 when he beat Georgie Abrams in Washington 2 years ago. The truth is that Steve weighed only 148 1/2 on that occasion, 6 1/4 pounds less than Abrams. Nevertheless, Mamakos is sure he will win the impending encounter. The fact that he made a similar prediction before the Aaron victory is sufficient reason to respect his confidence in himself. Los Angeles, California, January 5th. Recovered from an appendicitis operation, which he underwent December 22nd, George Halas, owner-coach of the Chicago Bears football team, was discharged from St. Vincent's Hospital today. Halas was greeted by his wife and 2 children, who turned the reunion into a double celebration inasmuch as today was his daughter Virginia's 18th birthday anniversary. George Jr., age 15, is the other child. The Chicago coach said he felt pretty good and was hoping to leave for Chicago by train on Thursday. And that is sports, and that is the news for Monday, January 6th, 1941. Henry Chop reporting. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.